When someone insults you, the first mistake isn't getting angry. The first mistake is reacting too fast. Because in that moment, they are not just listening to your answer. They are reading you. They are watching to see if one sharp comment can make your face heat up. If one laugh in front of a crowd can make you rush to defend yourself. If one little, "you're too sensitive," is enough to pull you out of position. You think you are protecting your dignity, but sometimes all you are doing is handing them the map to your emotional control panel. In James Gross's model of emotion regulation, there is one cold truth. Stopping a reaction before it takes over is completely different from trying to hide it after you have already lost control. And this is what most easily manipulated people never understand. An insult is not always an attack. Many times, it is a status test. In this video, we are going to dissect the 3 layers inside those few seconds before you respond. The frame they are trying to build, the power you are still holding, and the exact moment a person turns themselves into someone begging to be respected again. The final part will change the way you see every moment you reacted just to prove yourself. If you want to keep power instead of winning a petty exchange, start here. Inside every insult, there is a small trap. It forces you to leave yourself. For a few seconds, the other person becomes the center. Why would they say that? Who heard it? How do I answer without looking weak? If I stay silent, do I look powerless? If I hit back, am I making myself smaller? And the moment your mind starts chasing those questions, your position has already shifted. You are no longer standing in your own frame. You are standing inside theirs. This video is not about accepting disrespect, and it is not about staying silent so you can look superior. A powerful person does not swallow everything and call it maturity, but they also do not throw their emotions into the room just to prove they still have value. The difference lives inside the first few seconds. Before you speak, your body has already spoken. Your eyes speak. Your shoulders speak. Your breathing speaks. The way you force a laugh, the way you look around, the way you rush to interrupt, the way your voice suddenly rises, all of it sends a signal. And a manipulative person does not need you to confess your weakness. They only need to see you react. If one small sentence can knock you off your axis, they will remember it. Not because they are smarter than you, but because you just gave them free data. So before we talk about the perfect response, you have to understand the ground rule. An insult is not just a sentence. It is a test of who controls the room. You walk into a salary review after 6 months of doing more than your title ever required. You stayed late. You fixed other people's mistakes. You carried the work no one else wanted to touch. And when it is finally time to talk about your new salary, you still open with the same familiar line. I don't want to ask for too much, but... In that exact moment, you discount yourself before the other person even starts negotiating. They do not need to insult you. You have already done it for them. Then they say it softly. I think you still need more time to prove yourself. No shouting. No obvious humiliation. Just one sentence, polite enough that no one can call it out, but cold enough to put you back in a lower position. And then you start doing what so many people do when they feel their value being questioned. You explain more. You list what you have done. You bring up the late nights. You say how grateful you are for the opportunity. You try to prove you are not greedy, not ungrateful, not overestimating yourself. But that is the trap. You think you are defending your value. In reality, you are asking someone else to confirm that your value is real. And once a person has made you negotiate against yourself, they no longer need to win the argument. An insult works the same way. It does not have to be crude. It does not have to be loud. It does not have to leave obvious evidence. It only has to push you into the position of proving you are not as low as they just implied. A little calm down after they deliberately touched a nerve. A little "you're too sensitive" after they belittled you in front of other people. A little "I was just joking" after they made the whole room laugh at your expense. If you rush to defend yourself, they have controlled the rhythm. If you force a laugh to keep the peace, they have found your limit. If you talk too much trying to be understood, they have turned you into someone asking to be respected again. That is the ground rule. Disrespect is not just speech. It is an attempt to position you, and when you react too fast, you are not just answering the insult. You are signing your name under the place they prepared for you. You know that feeling. It is not anger exploding right away. It starts as a tiny hollow space in your chest, that half second where you do not know whether to laugh, answer, or pretend the sentence did not touch you at all. You are sitting with a group of friends, talking about the plan you are building. Someone smirks and says, "Dreaming big again?" No one calls it an insult. They just laugh. And you laugh too. Not because it is funny, but because if you do not laugh, the group will turn you into the one who can't take a joke. So you shrink your own plan. "Nah, I was just saying." One small sentence, but it drains the force out of you right there at the table. At home, you say you want to make more money, leave your old job, do something bigger with your life. A family member looks at you with that mix of pity and doubt and says, "Don't be delusional, just live normally first." It sounds like advice, but underneath it, there is a frame. Stay where you are. Stay small. Do not make other people uncomfortable with your ambition. And if you start explaining too much, you have stepped directly into that frame. You are no longer speaking like someone building their life. You are speaking like a defendant trying to prove they are not insane. On a date, you clearly state something you do not like. The other person looks at you and says, "You're too sensitive." They are not solving the problem. They are changing the roles. From the person who just crossed a boundary, they become the calm one. From the person with a boundary, you become the one with a problem. And if you rush to explain that you are not sensitive, you have already lost at the first layer, because now the story is no longer about their behavior. The story is your reaction. That is the real wound. Not the insult itself, but the moment you begin editing yourself so other people do not think badly of you. You speak softer. You laugh faster. You explain longer. You let a dirty joke pass, then call it maturity. But deep inside, you know, you are not calm. You are trying not to lose any more position. And this is the most dangerous part. Every time you do that, you are not just surviving an uncomfortable moment. You are teaching people exactly how to lower you next time. Next time, they do not start from zero. They already have data. The friend who said, "Dreaming big again," has not forgotten that you laughed along. They remember it very clearly. Next time, when there is one more new person at the table, that line comes back with a sharper edge. "So, how's that big plan going?" Not because they actually care, but because last time, that sentence made you shrink without making them pay a price. Is greater than today, Roy. Family works the same way. After one time of over-explaining your ambition, They no longer need to hear the whole story. The second you start talking about money, freedom, leaving the old path, someone can cut you off. Here we go again. And if you instantly become defensive, they get more evidence for the frame they already placed on you. Impulsive, delusional, unrealistic, unable to just live normally. In a relationship, if you're too sensitive, once made you talk for 10 minutes just to prove you were not sensitive, it will be used faster next time, not because it is true, because it worked. That is how you lose position. Other people do not just hear your reaction, they store it. They store which sentence makes you lose control, which tone makes you lower your voice, which kind of crowd makes you rush to defend yourself, which label makes you instantly want to prove you are not that. A manipulative person does not need to know your entire past. They only need to know one button, the button that makes you leave your position. And the coldest part is this: many times, you are the one who hands it to them, by laughing when nothing was funny, by explaining when nothing needed explaining, by answering too quickly to a sentence that never deserved access to your nervous system. Humiliation is not just pain, it is pain with witnesses. So when someone lowers you in front of other people, your body wants to repair the image immediately. It wants to erase the moment, to recover face, to prove that you are still intelligent, still calm, still worthy of respect. But that exact urgency is what exposes your position. You are no longer controlling the story. You are trying to escape the story they just wrote for you. And when someone sees that you can be rewritten that easily, they will try again. Not always with the same sentence, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a joke. Sometimes by cutting you off right when your voice starts gaining force. Sometimes by calling your self-respect ego. They will change the tool, but they are testing the same thing. Can you stay grounded when you are being misdefined? Or does it only take one person saying something false about you for you to abandon your position and run to fix your image in their eyes? This is where so many people lose power without realizing it. They do not lose because they were insulted. They lose because they turned their reaction into a map. And once that map is in someone else's hands, they do not need to be stronger than you. They only need to know the way in. Next time, when that line comes back, you will see the trap more clearly. You are sitting with the same group of friends. Someone looks over and says, "So how's that big plan going?" The table gives a small laugh. No one has to say directly that you are the joke. The sentence already did that. It places you in a position, the person who talked big and might not be able to deliver. The old version of you would react fast. You would laugh along. You would say, "Nothing serious yet." You would shrink yourself before anyone else even had the chance to do it for you. You would rescue their joke by turning yourself into the easygoing one. And that is the moment you lose the frame. But someone who understands the rule does not rush to save the room. They do not jump in to fill the silence. They do not laugh just so everyone else can stay comfortable. They let that sentence sit on the table for one extra beat. Not because they are afraid, but because they refuse to clean up after the person who just lowered them. There is a massive difference here. Weak silence is when you want to speak, but do not dare to. Controlled silence is when you could speak, but you do not give the insult the right to decide your speed. Weak silence begs for the moment to pass. Controlled silence forces the other person to stand beside their own words. That is why so many people cannot tolerate a calm pause. They want you to react quickly so they can see where the story is going. They want you to laugh so they can be released from responsibility. They want you to get angry so they can say, "See, this is what I mean." But when you do not give them that reaction, the sentence starts losing its cover. A joke is no longer rescued by your laughter. A put-down is no longer hidden by your urgency. A false label has nowhere to land because you are not rushing to prove it wrong. This is the reversal. You think reacting is how you take power back, but many times, reacting too fast is exactly how you hand power over. You give them the rhythm, you give them the evidence, you give them the scene they were trying to create. A person who holds power does not ask, "What should I say right now?" They ask, "If I speak right now, whose frame am I serving?" That question cuts through a lot. It cuts through the instinct to prove yourself, the fear of being misunderstood, the craving for the whole room to confirm that you are still okay. Stoicism was never about swallowing humiliation and calling it peace. It is the refusal to hand internal command to the person who just tried to activate you. So your first response should not be a sharp comeback, not an explanation, not a fake smile. Your first response is to recover the rhythm. Before you say anything, there has to be a pause cold enough for your body to remember its position. And that pause begins with 3 seconds. 3 seconds sounds small, but in the moment you are being insulted, 3 seconds is enough to stop you from selling your position for cheap. Someone says, "So how's that big plan going?" The whole table waits for the old version of you to appear, to laugh, to explain, to lower your voice, to turn your own plan into a joke before they finish doing it for you. But this time, you do not follow that rhythm. You pause. Not because you froze. You pause like someone who has just seen the trap, shoulders down, jaw loose, eyes not scanning the room to see who is laughing. You do not rush to save the room from the discomfort someone else just created. In the first second, your body wants to betray your position. It wants to laugh so you can feel safe. It wants to say, "No, I was just joking." It wants to explain that you are still working on it, that things take time, that you are not delusional, that you have reasons. That is your body trying to buy acceptance back. Do not let it pay with your power. In the second, you look at the sentence again. Not at the wound first, at the structure. What is this sentence doing? Is it actually asking? Or is it hanging your ambition in front of the whole table? Is it opening a conversation? Or is it turning your plan into a prop for someone else's laughter? The moment you ask that, you are no longer inside the old reflex. You have stood outside the trap long enough to see its shape. In the third second, you choose the rhythm. This is the part weak people skip. They think power is in the comeback. No. A comeback is only powerful if the rhythm before it belongs to you. If you speak while panicking, even the sharpest line smells defensive. If you laugh while hurting, that laugh does not make you more likable. It makes you cheaper. If you explain while being positioned, your explanation does not lift you up. It confirms that they had the right to put you down. 3 seconds do not make you win. 3 seconds stop you from losing the old way. After those 3 seconds, you may need to say very little. Sometimes only, "What do you mean by that?" No tension, no smile, no extra padding to make it softer. Just place their sentence back in front of them. Because the person who throws a put-down usually wants you to do the rest of the work. They want you to blush. They want you to stumble. They want you to make their intention invisible through your own reaction. But when you pause, see clearly, and hand the sentence back to the person who created it, the game changes. Now, they have to stand beside what they just said. And you are no longer the one running to repair your image. You are the one watching them explain theirs. But 3 seconds is only the first door. If after that you still answer the insult on its surface, you can still be pulled back in. The next layer is not about responding to the insult. It is about responding to the frame behind it. Because if you answer the words, it is very easy to step into their game. So how's that big plan going? If you say, "It's going fine," you have accepted the test. If you say, "I'm still working on it," you have started giving a progress report to someone who has no authority to ask for one. If you spend 5 more minutes explaining the plan, you have turned a mocking comment into an interview. That is why your first answer should not defend the plan. It should expose the behavior. Not, "Actually, I have a lot going on." But, "What do you mean by that?" One short sentence, not aggressive, not smiling, no extra padding to rescue them. That sentence does one very precise thing. It makes the other person take responsibility for the frame they just threw into the room. If they were only joking, they now have to explain the joke. If they were lowering you, they have to make it clearer in front of everyone else. If they were testing you, they know you saw the test. This is how you avoid answering the insult. You return ownership to the person who created it. On a date, when someone says, "You're too sensitive," the old version of you would rush to correct the label. "No, I'm not sensitive. I just think." And the moment you say that, you have accepted the test. Now the story is no longer their behavior. The story is your personality. A person who understands the rule does not do that. They do not defend their right to have boundaries. They look at the frame and say, "You crossed a line. Calling me sensitive doesn't change that." Short. Clear enough. No permission asked. No turning a boundary into a dissertation, because a boundary that has to be explained too much starts to look like a plea. In a family, when someone says, "Here we go again," the old version of you would try to prove that this time is different, that you have thought it through, that you are not childish, that you are not just dreaming. But the more you explain, the deeper you stand inside the role they wrote for you, the person who has to ask for permission to have ambition. A colder sentence is, "You don't have to believe in it, but don't make it smaller before I've built it." That sentence does not beg them to believe. It sets a limit on how they are allowed to speak about what you are building. Not everyone deserves to hear the full plan. Not everyone deserves access to your strategy room. And not everyone gets to turn your future into a joke so they can feel more comfortable with the smallness of their own. This is a real boundary. Not raising your voice. Not attacking back just to make it hurt. Not searching for a comeback sharp enough to silence the whole table. A boundary is the ability to say very little, but change the rules of the exchange. You do not speak so they will like you. You speak to make clear what is not allowed to continue. That was unnecessary. I'm not continuing with this tone. Say that directly. Each sentence is short, because a person with position does not over-present their right to be respected. They simply mark the line. And if the other person keeps going, the important part is no longer the sentence. The important part is access. You remove your eyes from them. You remove your energy from the game. You remove their right to hear any more explanation. Because sometimes the strongest answer is not a sharper sentence. It is showing them this. When they choose to lower you, they lose access to the full version of you. That is how a boundary becomes a choice. And when that choice repeats long enough, the way people see you begins to change. The first time you do this, they may not like it. Not because you are wrong, but because the old version of you was easier to use. The old version laughed to soften the room. The old version explained so no one would misunderstand. The old version made itself smaller, so other people would not have to face the fact that they had just crossed a line. When that version disappears, the room notices. In that same group of friends, a few weeks later, they may still try it. So how's that big plan going? But this time, the question does not land on the same person. You do not laugh like before. You do not shrink your plan. You do not rush to rescue the moment. You just look at them for one beat and say, "What do you mean by that?" No performance, no anger, no speech about how hard you are trying. Just one sentence, clear enough to say, if they want to lower you, they have to stand publicly beside that intention. And from that moment, the way they see you begins to change, not immediately into respect. Life is not that clean. At first, they may call you more serious, less fun, harder to joke with, not as chill as you used to be. That is the first price of no longer being easy to use. The people who benefited from your agreeableness will always call your boundaries a problem. But underneath those words, a new calculation is happening. They begin to think before they speak. The old joke is no longer as cheap as it used to be. The old label no longer sticks as fast. The old jab no longer pulls you out of position as easily. And human beings are practical. They may not like your boundary, but they learn very quickly what still works and what is dead. Work is the same. When you stop opening with, "I don't want to ask for too much," the person across from you may not like you more, but they will hear you differently. When you stop speaking like someone asking for permission to exist, every sentence begins to carry a different weight. You do not need to announce that you have value. You only need to stop speaking in the voice of someone who doubts it. That is perception. Not the image you try to advertise, but the image other people are forced to read from the way you operate, again and again. People do not only read what you say, they read what no longer controls you. They read whether a sarcastic comment can still make your face heat up, whether doubt still makes you over-explain, whether you still laugh to cover a put-down, whether you still run to repair your image every time someone defines you incorrectly. And when that answer repeats long enough, you become a different kind of person in their eyes. Not someone who can never be touched, but someone who is not easy to move. That is what people begin to respect, even when they do not want to admit it. Not your kindness, not your endurance, not the fact that you always keep the peace. They respect what they cannot drag out of position with one cheap sentence. But the highest layer is not only changing the way other people see you. The highest layer is not giving them too much data to define you in the first place. Because if someone has already used your ambition as a joke, they no longer automatically get to hear the next plan. If they turned your pain into an excuse to call you too sensitive, they no longer automatically get access to the softest part of you. If they used one honest moment to place you lower, they no longer have the right to receive the full version of you. This is where most people fail. They learn how to answer an insult, but they still keep handing over the material for the next one. They speak too early, explain too deeply, reveal too much. They hand the rough draft of their life to people who are only looking for mistakes to laugh at. Then they act surprised when those things come back as weapons. An unfinished plan becomes a joke. A fear you once confessed becomes a button they can press. A failure you once shared becomes evidence every time they want to remind you not to dream too far. Not everyone is listening to understand you. Some people are listening to learn how to use you. That is why a person who holds power does not live like a public document. They do not narrate every move. They do not explain every decision. They do not hand their internal map to people who have never proven they deserve to hold it. Not because they are trying to look mysterious, but because they understand that access is power. Not everyone deserves access to the blueprint. You do not need to tell the whole table where the plan is going. You do not need to update the person who once laughed at it. You do not need to convince your family that this time you are serious. You do not need to reopen a wound for someone who once used it to call you weak. Some things should only be seen after they have taken shape. Some results should arrive later than other people's curiosity. Some parts of you should never be placed on the table just to buy cheap approval. This is not avoidance. Avoidance is staying silent because you are afraid to be seen. Information control is staying silent because you know who has not earned the right to see. Completely different. A weak person keeps secrets because they fear judgment. A person with position keeps distance because they understand that every piece of data can become leverage in the wrong hands. And when you begin to live this way, something strange happens. You need to be understood immediately, a little less. You need to be believed immediately, a little less. You need the whole room to confirm that you are not crazy, not too sensitive, not delusional, not as small as they once said. You no longer place your entire self on the table, waiting for a kind verdict. You choose which parts get seen, which parts stay back, and which parts must be proven through results, not explanations. That is the destination. Next time someone says, "So how's that big plan going?" you do not need to open the blueprint. You do not need to prove your progress. You do not need to let them turn your future into a public examination. You can look at them, hold the rhythm, and say, "You'll see." 2 words. No defense, no bragging, no permission asked. Just a door closing in front of someone who no longer has the right to enter. And when you live like this long enough, you are no longer the person reacting to prove yourself. You are no longer the person staying silent just to endure. You become someone who knows what deserves a response, what deserves to be left behind, and who no longer gets access to the realest part of you. That is the real meaning of holding your power. Not holding anger inside your body, but holding the right to decide who gets to touch you, who gets to read you, and who only gets to stand outside and watch the result. Now you can see what truly lives beneath an insult. Not just sound, not just attitude, not just an uncomfortable sentence you need to get through. It is a test. A test to see whether you will leave your position, whether you will rush to prove yourself, whether you will shrink yourself, whether you will hand more data to the person who just tried to lower you. But watching this does not make you stronger. If next time One small sarcastic comment still makes you force a laugh, over-explain, or run to repair your image in someone else's eyes. Then you do not own this lesson yet. You have only heard it. You now have 4 very simple tools. 3 seconds to recover your rhythm. 1 question to answer the frame instead of the insult. 1 boundary to mark what is not allowed to continue. And 1 principle colder than all of them. The person who uses your information to lower you no longer gets access to the full version of you. The rest is not in your memory. It is in the next moment. When someone says, "You're too sensitive," do not rush to prove you are not sensitive. When someone laughs at your plan, do not open the blueprint for their inspection. When someone tries to place you lower, do not sign your name under that position by reacting too fast. Pause, see the frame, hold the rhythm. Then decide whether that person still deserves an answer, your energy, or any more data from you. If you understand this, comment, "I hold my power." Not for me. To seal a decision with yourself, next time you do not react like the old version of you. Subscribe and turn on notifications. In the next video, you will see the 5 hidden psychological tests manipulative people use to measure you in silence. They do not need to control you right away. They only need to know which point makes you leave your position. They are testing you. Never fail the hidden test. Power begins before the first word.